Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into the incredibly suspenseful, totally brilliant cooperative tabletop game, Horrified Greek Monsters. If you've been wanting to learn how to play but kind of felt overwhelmed by the rulebook, you are in the exact right place. We're going to give you a super clear, structured beginner's guide so you can hit the ground running, work with your team, and save ancient Greece from absolute destruction. Here's our roadmap for today. First, welcome to the myth. Then, setting up the board. Third, the hero phase. Fourth, the monster phase. And finally, defeating the monsters. Okay, part one. Welcome to the myth and the stakes of the game. Before we figure out how to fight, we really need to know what we're trying to prevent, right? And that brings us to one very terrifying number, 7. This is the absolute limit of your terror meter. If the tracker on your board hits 7, well, the gods completely abandon you and your game is instantly over. Every single time a hero or a defenseless legend gets defeated by a monster, that meter ticks closer and closer to this dreaded number. It's basically the pulse of the whole game. So, what does this all mean for winning and losing? Well, to win, you've got to defeat the required monsters on the board. For a beginner game, that means taking down both Cerberus and the Basilisk. But look at the dual threats you're dealing with here. You lose if the terror meter reaches 7 like we just saw, but you also lose if the monster deck runs out of cards. This means you're constantly battling both escalating terror on the board and a rapidly ticking clock on the deck. You literally cannot afford to waste a single turn. Moving on to part 2, setting up the board and preparing for battle. Now that we know the massive stakes involved, let's look at the physical components you need to lay out on the table to prepare for this impending threat. During setup, one of the biggest initial steps is placing the lair tokens. There are 4 of these hidden location markers placed face down on specific spaces around the board. And here's the catch. Even if a specific monster isn't in your current game, all 4 tokens go out anyway. You actually have to hunt for the correct one by moving to a lair space and spending collected item tokens with a combined value of 3 or more just to reveal it and see what's underneath. It's kind of like a high-stakes shell game that you have to solve while monsters are actively hunting you. Next up, you'll set out the perk cards. Think of these as your ultimate lifelines. They're these super powerful, one-time abilities that let you literally bend the rules of the game. We're talking teleporting heroes across the map, sharing items from afar, or even forcing monsters to move away from danger. You earn these lifelines by successfully guiding wandering legends to their safe locations. Or, interestingly enough, you get one as a sort of consolation prize whenever a hero gets defeated and the terror meter goes up. You're also going to place the Frenzy Monster marker. This goes to the monster currently on the board with the lowest printed Frenzy number. In a beginner game between the Basilisk and Cerberus, Cerberus holds this title. Whoever holds this marker is hyper-aggressive. They're going to move and attack first during every single monster phase. And what's absolutely crucial to remember here is that this marker can actually shift between monsters during the game. Whoever has it might even end up attacking twice in a single turn if the cards align just right. All right, part 3, the hero phase. It's time to take action. Setup is done, the board is primed, and now the power is entirely in your hands. Here's how a hero's turn actually works. You have a menu of actions, and you can mix, match, or repeat them up to 4 times on your turn. You can move to an adjacent space, or use an action to guide a legend to safety along with you. You can pick up item tokens scattered around the board, which are basically your main currency for survival. You can also share those items with another hero if they're in your exact space, which is a totally vital cooperative strategy to make sure the right person has the right gear to fight the right monster. And finally, you can use those items to advance a monster's specific defeat condition. It's a brilliant, snappy core loop that keeps everybody engaged. Section 4. The monster phase. The threat responds. You might feel like you're in control, but now the board strikes back. At the start of the monster phase, you draw a single monster card. The golden rule here: always read that card exactly from top to bottom. First, place the number of items it tells you to pull from the bag onto the board. Second, resolve the event text. This is usually where a new legend spawns on the board, needing your protection. Third, activate the Frenzy monster, making them move and potentially attack. And finally, activate any monsters that match the specific symbols printed at the very bottom of the card, like a sword, a column, or a vase. Reading top to bottom every single time keeps the turn flowing logically and flawlessly. When those monsters activate, things get incredibly dangerous. Monsters will always move toward the closest hero or legend. If they reach you, they attack by rolling dice equal to their attack power. And if they happen to roll an exclamation point on those dice, their absolutely devastating special ability triggers first. Now, to block damage, a hero can discard their hard-earned items. 1 discarded item equals 1 damage blocked. But if a hero decides not to block, or if a monster catches a defenseless legend who can't hold items,
they are defeated, and that terror meter we talked about earlier spikes immediately.
And this illustrates a high-level strategy you'll discover as you play. During the source playthrough we analyzed, one of the players, Julie, dropped this perfect piece of tabletop banter. Let the terror meter go up. I'll sacrifice myself to save the items. Because honestly, sometimes holding onto a perfectly colored, high-value item for your next turn is actually worth taking a deliberate defeat and a terror penalty. Think about it. You get knocked out, you give up a point of terror, but you respawn on your next turn with your crucial items completely intact, and you even get a perk card for dying. It's a totally calculated, tactical sacrifice.
Section 5. Defeating the monsters. The climax.
Okay, we know how to move, we know how to survive the monster phase, and we know how to use our items. Now let's look at the specific mechanics needed to actually win. Take a look at this comparison. What makes this game so fascinating is its completely asymmetrical design. The two beginner monsters play entirely differently from each other. Cerberus is all about pushing your luck, rolling dice, matching specific symbols, and tracking down his hidden lair token. The Basilisk, on the other hand, requires absolutely no dice to defeat. It relies entirely on math and resource management, hoarding high-value items, traveling to temples to bless them, and doing some basic addition to reach a massive threshold.
So let's break down the multi-step puzzle for taking down Cerberus. First, spend items to find and reveal his specific lair token. Then, physically move your hero to that lair space. Once you're there, you have to spend a blue item just to unlock the ability to roll 3 dice. Didn't roll what you need? No problem. You can spend green items to roll additional dice. Your goal is to roll blanks to match all 5 required symbol tokens sitting on his monster sheet. Once all 5 are cleared, you spend 1 final green item to essentially drag Cerberus through the underworld door, defeating him for good. And here is how that contrasts with the Basilisk. Your focus here is the temples of Zeus, Athena, Hades, and Nyx scattered around the board. You need to use your actions to bring items to these 4 temples to bless them. A blessed item permanently gains a +2 to its printed strength value. You are trying to accumulate a massive total blessed item strength of 30 or more across those 4 temples. Once you hit that magic number of 30, you must move directly to the Basilisk's physical location and discard 1 final item with a value of 2 or more to strike the finishing blow. Now that you understand the mechanics, the stakes, and the specific asymmetrical puzzles required to bring down these iconic beasts, will you strategically wield the myths of ancient Greece to your advantage? Or will the terror meter consume you before you can even take your final turn? You'll just have to get this phenomenal game to your table, test out your new knowledge, and find out. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy hunting.